It began on a cold November morning, the kind where the air bites with a hint of winter and people move quickly through the streets of downtown Chicago, bundled in coats and scarves, their lives rushing as fast as the wind. On the corner of State and Monroe, where street performers usually battled for attention, 80-year-old Ethan Cruz stood with a small wooden sign that read, "Sing your favorite song, no judgment, just joy." His hands trembled more from nerves than from the cold. Ethan wasn't a street musician. He wasn't a social experiment guy. He wasn't even trying to go viral on YouTube, although he had a camera set up beside him. He was just a man trying to feel something again. 3 months earlier, Ethan had lost his mother, the only family he had left after a long battle with heart disease. His mother had been the kind of woman who hummed through her pain, who sang while stirring soup, who believed that every voice mattered, even the sad ones. After her funeral, Ethan felt the world grow quiet in a way that terrified him. His apartment was silent. His phone was silent. Even his own voice felt unfamiliar when he tried to speak aloud. One night, scrolling through old videos of his mother singing in the kitchen, he remembered her last words to him. "Don't stop listening to people, Ethan. That's where the magic lives." And so, for reasons he couldn't fully articulate, Ethan picked a corner downtown, held up his sign, and waited to see if the world still had something to sing. The first passerby barely slowed down, though she smiled politely. The second gave him a confused shake of the head. The third, a tall man in a business suit, paused long enough to read the sign but then hurried off as his phone buzzed. For a while, all Ethan got were nods, awkward half-smiles, and people pretending not to see him at all. He tried to stay patient, reminding himself that people weren't unkind. They were simply busy, tired, or maybe just afraid to be vulnerable in public. But just as he was wondering whether this had all been a pointless idea, a little girl in a bright yellow coat tugged on her mother's sleeve and whispered, "Mommy, can I sing?" The mother hesitated, but something in Ethan's hopeful expression softer. "Just one song, baby," she said. The girl stepped forward shyly. Ethan bent down and asked gently, "What's your favorite song?" She thought for a moment, then whispered, "Twinkle, twinkle," and she sang quietly at first. Then, with surprising confidence, her innocent voice floating through the frigid air, like a fragile bubble, people slowed down. A few stopped. The kind of moment Ethan had prayed for began to unfold. Not grand, not dramatic, but pure. When she finished, Ethan clapped like she had just won a Grammy, and the little girl beamed before skipping back to her mother. "Thank you," Ethan said. "No," the mother replied softly. "Thank you." What followed surprised him. A college student, earbuds hanging around his neck, stepped up next. "I'm not a singer," he warned, "but my favorite song is Take Me Home, Country Roads. My dad used to sing it every morning." His voice cracked halfway through the first line, but people around him chimed in, and suddenly strangers were singing a classic together like old friends at a campfire. After him came a waitress on break who belted out a soulful version of Adele, a quiet woman who whispered a hymn she used to sing in church, a teenage boy who rapped a verse from his favorite hip-hop track even though he kept losing his rhythm, and an elderly man who crooned a love song from the 70s, dedicating it to his wife who had passed away 5 years earlier. Every person brought a story, a memory, a piece of their soul tied to a melody. Ethan recorded everything, not for numbers of views, but because he felt like he was collecting humanity again, one song at a time. As the hours passed, the crowd grew. People gathered not to watch a performance, but to participate in something rare. Unfiltered, vulnerable, collective connection. Ethan felt alive for the first time in months. He felt his mother's voice somewhere in the back of his mind, whispering, "See, magic." But the most powerful moment of the day came unexpectedly, as the sun began to sink behind the tall buildings and the city lights flickered awake. A thin man in his 50s, wearing a worn-out army jacket, approached cautiously. He had a graying beard, sunken eyes, and a look that suggested life had not been gentle with him. People nearby shifted slightly, not out of malice, but out of uncertainty. The man cleared his throat. "Can I sing?" he asked quietly. Ethan nodded warmly. "Of course." "What's your favorite song?" The man stared at the ground, rubbing his hands together. "It's been a long time since I said it out loud," he murmured. After a long pause, he whispered, "Hallelujah. The Leonard Cohen one." A hush fell over the small crowd. He closed his eyes, took a shaky breath, and began to sing. His voice was weathered, raw, cracked in places, but full, unbelievably full, of something deeper than sound, pain, memory, love, loss, redemption. Every note carried years of battles fought and survived, years of loneliness, years of being overlooked in a world that moved too fast. People stopped walking. Some placed hands over their hearts. One woman wiped away tears. Even the usual city noise, honking cars, distant sirens, chatter, seemed to quiet in reverence. When he reached the chorus, his voice broke completely, and he whispered, "Sorry, it's been a while." Ethan stepped closer and said gently, "It's perfect. Keep going." The man tried again, steadier, and this time something extraordinary happened. The crowd began to sing with him, softly, respectfully, as though trying not to overpower him. And he, this man who looked like he hadn't been seen, really seen, in years, opened his eyes and let himself believe he belonged. When the song ended, there was silence. Then applause so warm it almost seemed to melt the cold from the air. The man looked overwhelmed. "I haven't sung in front of anyone since before I lost my home," he admitted. "I used to be in a choir once. My wife loved when I sang this." His lip trembled. She passed in 2012. Ethan felt tears prick his own eyes. A woman stepped forward and handed the man her scarf. "You have a beautiful voice," she said. Another person offered him a hot drink. Someone else asked if he needed a warm place to stay. Ethan watched as a small group of strangers began treating this man with the kind of kindness he thought the world had forgotten how to give. It was as if the simple act of singing, of sharing his voice, had reminded everyone of the humanity they often overlooked. As the crowd slowly dispersed, the man stayed behind, speaking quietly with a social worker who had been passing by and witnessed everything. Ethan approached him afterward. "Thank you," he said. "Your voice, it meant something today." The man nodded. "Thank you for giving me a place to sing again." He hesitated, then added, "Today was the first day in years where I felt like I wasn't invisible." Ethan helped him connect with a nearby shelter that partnered with outreach programs, and the man walked away surrounded by people who genuinely wanted to help him. Ethan stood there long after night arrived, overwhelmed with emotions he hadn't felt since before his mother's death. Grief, joy, hope, healing, all tangled together in a way that felt unbearably human. That night, back in his apartment, Ethan sat on his bed listening to the audio he had captured throughout the day. Every voice carried a story. Every story carried a heartbeat. And in all of it, he heard his mother, not literally, but in the echoes of kindness and courage that she had always believed in. He decided to upload a short montage online, not expecting much. But by morning, the video had already gathered thousands of views, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Comments flooded in. I cried, listening to these strangers sing. "This is the most human thing I've seen in months. We need more of this in the world." Months later, as spring warmed the city and flowers began pushing through stubborn, frozen soil, Ethan stood on his usual corner again. People approached the mic eagerly now, having seen his videos or hearing about the singing guy from Friends. A woman sang a lullaby her grandmother taught her. A group of teenagers performed a messy but energetic pop cover. A nurse sang a soft hymn during her lunch break. And in all of it, Ethan felt that old emptiness inside him shrinking. Not completely gone, but healing. His mother would have loved this. She would have stood beside him, clapping for every off-key note, cheering for every shaky voice. He closed his eyes for a moment and whispered, "This is for you, Mom."